Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Jolly Fibrosis, and today I'm going to be doing something I don't really do all that often, and that is a response video. So, what exactly am I responding to? Well, very recently, the YouTuber by the name of Company Man, who has a very good channel, and I will absolutely say does a great deal of work in researching the topics that he covers, and recently he covered a video asking about the decline in NASCAR. It's specifically called The Decline of NASCAR, What Happened? And he brought up some very interesting points. However, I will honestly say that by the way that he kind of was talking about it, it seems like he really didn't watch the sport much or didn't grow up with it. That's perfectly fine. I think that he can be able to cover a good amount of stuff that actually makes a lot of sense and everything. But for me, I've been a NASCAR fan since 1999. I grew up watching the last years of the Gen 4 era. I saw the rise of the COT and the subsequent hatred with it. I saw the rise of Toyota. I've been watching this for a long time. So I'm not here to really refute his points or anything like that, but at least kind of give my take on it slightly on his points and whether to agree, slightly disagree, or at least clarify, at least from my perspective, part of the areas of decline in NASCAR. So by the end of his video, he covers the following reasons: an older audience, boredom, the death of Dale Earnhardt, rule changes, Brian France, the economy, personality, referring to personality of the drivers, and the environment. All of these claims are not bad by any means, and I think they're actually very well thought out. But like I said, he seems to either be only a casual viewer or just did a lot of research on the sport of NASCAR and just kind of went with that. And like I said, he's got a good video. Right now, as I'm looking at it, he has 8.6 thousand likes and only 249 dislikes. Like I said, he did a great job on the video, and I definitely think that he did a good job. But I want to clarify a little bit. So, in regards to the older audience, I will say that I definitely agree. I mean, the fact is that the average NASCAR fan is apparently 55 years old or slightly older. So it does kind of hold an older audience. Like I said, I started following in 1999. So at that time, by the end of the season, actually, Dale Jarrett won the championship. Ernie Irvan would only run for half of the season, or a little over half of the season, before getting injured at Michigan again and subsequently retiring. You had Dale Earnhardt just a year prior winning the Daytona 500. Jeff Gordon was still racking up wins and points and just being overly badass in the 24 machine. And while I personally don't have any memories of 1999, I do have a sports clipping of the 1999 Rockingham race, which Jeff Burton won against Ward Burton. Really more of my memories start to come about around the time of 2004, actually. 2003, 2004. There's not much that I remember really from the 2002 season. I can remember snippets of things that happened, such as I remember Robbie Gordon winning at Watkins Glen and Sonoma. I know that I was watching I think it was the 2002 Pepsi 400 at Daytona. It rained, it rained, it rained, it rained, it rained, and then finally they got the race done, and Jeff Gordon won. And I do remember seeing Matt Kenseth race the final laps at Homestead and claimed his Winston Cup championship. So I don't really have I don't have any memories of anything prior to 1999. However, I have done a lot of research on the sport. Some of my favorite eras in terms of drivers and personality and sponsorship and cars even come from the 80s, the 70s. I love Harry Gant. I love Richard Petty. I like Dale Earnhardt. I like Neil Bonnet. I love Davey Allison. I love Alan Kowicki. All these guys raced and were born well before I was. I wasn't born until 1995. I'm only 24. but I've done a lot of research on the sport. But I will say that definitely the older audience, that's a very true fact. Now, I know a lot of people who are around my age as well who are fans of NASCAR. They watch it. We play racing games together involving and kind of centered around NASCAR. And these people are anywhere from the ages of 18 to 20 years of age at minimum, and 26, 29 in the older category. I will say, though, I do have to agree with Company Man, however, on one big thing, and it kind of leads into the next topic of boredom. Yeah, for me as a NASCAR fan, it has kind of gotten boring a little bit, and unfortunately, I have a very, very hard time sitting down and watching a full, 3-4 hour race. I just can't really do it anymore. It's hard to keep myself stimulated that long. And I think if we went back to the older style racing with the Winston Cup era points, racing style, everything else like that, I think that we may be worse off. However, there is a little bit of a benefit. So while I may have a bit of a problem sitting down and watching a race, however, it doesn't mean that I don't have a problem with the sport in regards to it being boring. I've just found other outlets to enjoy the sport, and in addition, I'm usually a fairly busy guy, and as well, around 2014, actually in March of 2014, I had to start working. I needed to get a job when I was freshly out of high school. So, with that being stated, I lost a lot of time and a lot of ability to watch the races live as they happened. And unfortunately, I missed out on some apparently really good finishes. I missed out on Dale Jr.'s final win at Talladega. Not his final win, but his last win there in 2015. I missed out on both of the Pocono races in 2014 that he won. I missed out on a good majority of the 2014 season all the way through 2018. I went about 4 years with missing a good majority of races and probably only catching maybe 1 or 2 races live as they happen on television. In addition, well, it's a little tough to sit through sometimes. You look back on how the sport kind of evolved, at least in how its action went. We have the original Winston Cup, with which led into 2003 and finished in 2003. You have the Chase for the Cup, which has gone through many iterations in its time, going from a 10-car field to a 12-car field to a 13-car field one year, to then a now 16-car field to those who can get into the Chase. In addition, you also have stage racing, you have playoff points, you have so much going on in terms of points and having to keep track of everything with that, I will say it doesn't make it boring, but at this point it's a little difficult for me to kind of fall back into the fray. There are still drivers and everything that I like. I actually met Ben Rhodes when I was at Kentucky Speedway just a week ago, and cool dude, no doubt. Met some other drivers. I met Cole Custer, Austin Cindric, and Chase Briscoe at Kentucky as well for the Busch Series event. But yeah, the racing isn't really boring. To kind of expound on that a little bit, and it also kind of leads into the rule changes aspect of it somewhat, is that I think that if we were in the 2003 Winston Cup era with the way that the racing is now, I think that it would be more difficult to kind of get into it, but just on how the car is handled. So I think it'd be worse. I know that NASCAR is trying. I just don't personally like the changes that they've made so much, especially with the whole aspect of the elimination chase. I've never been a fan of that. But, okay, so boredom. I'll honestly admit, it's just hard to really sit down and watch 3 hours of racing. There are ways to make it easier and ways to make it better. If you're at the track, I would say by all means, if you can, rent out a scanner or pick up MRN radio and listen to that as the race is going on. And the one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand about racing, and what kind of sucks about a lot of people just being so anti-racing, is when you go to the racetrack, there's actually a lot of stuff to do. At Kentucky, for example, there was a lot of promotional material being handed out all over the place. Prizes you could win at certain locations for Ford, Chevy, Toyota, Honda, etc. And if you upgrade your tickets and everything like that, you can get to see a lot of stuff. You could get hot passes and you can go down into the garage area and get to see all of that good stuff. You know, it's very different going to the racetrack than watching it on TV. Watching it on TV can get fairly boring. I totally get that. But going to the race, that's usually not a boring experience. I'll still pop onto my phone every now and then and see what else is going on in the world, or see what other people are talking about in terms of the race. But I very thoroughly enjoy going to an actual racetrack and getting to see it. Next up, Dale Earnhardt. Now, he kind of brings this up in regards to also with the big contracts that NASCAR had signed with, like, Fox Sports, NBC, TNT, I think, and how a lot of these contracts actually lasted a long time and are still going on to this day. But with the death of Dale Earnhardt, I can definitely say that hurt the sport a lot. It definitely hurt the sport also in regards to the older generation. I've been following a bunch of different NASCAR Facebook pages, and I mean, I was alive and I did watch a little bit of Earnhardt race, but for me personally, it impacts me, but it doesn't impact me as personal. With the older NASCAR fans, I totally get why they love Dale Earnhardt, and I've grown to appreciate Dale Earnhardt as the decades have gone by. But the death of Dale Earnhardt definitely did hurt the sport, and I've talked to friends about this as well. NASCAR especially was pretty darn stupid in regards to its safety, because we lost Tony Roper, we lost Kenny Irwin, we lost Adam Petty. You know, all three of those guys died of the exact same injury. Heck, I think even Neil Bonnet died of the same injury, the vascular skull fracture and everything. They had information based off of earlier deaths that they definitely could have used to improve the safety of the sport. And to be honest, you know, I've done even more research on it and everything like that. Formula One was using the Hans device by the honestly later, but still early 90s. IndyCar started using the Hans device and whatnot. The soft wall implementation was that was set up at Indianapolis even years before Dale Earnhardt died. And I look at all of those examples, and yeah, I don't know if you could really prevent all of those deaths with the introduction of soft walls, the Hans device, or both. But I will definitely say that, unfortunately, NASCAR really dropped the ball in terms of safety. The fact that they didn't have the kill switch installed until after the death of Adam Petty, I believe, or maybe it was Kenny Irwin. You know, they really were lackadaisical about their safety. And unfortunately, you have Dale Earnhardt, the biggest name in NASCAR, who just, I think near the tail end of the 2000 season, or maybe the 1999 season, had back surgery to help heal him up. Very potentially could have gone forward and won himself an 8th championship had he survived the 2001 Daytona 500. And I look at other wrecks and everything like that, and even though that, you know, the usage of full-face helmets eventually came about, the eventual implementation of needing to have some type of head and neck restraint system in there, either the Hutchins device or the Hans device, generally the Hans device winning out. Kyle Larson currently does not use the Hans device, he uses a Hutchins instead. makes it a little bit more comfortable on him apparently, and he uses it in the sprint car series. I just look at NASCAR and I don't really understand why they waited so long to make these changes. You had dead drivers, unfortunately, on your hands, and you saw the impacts of these wrecks and everything like that, and you didn't do anything about it. And it's after the biggest name in your sport, a fan favorite, goes and dies, that then you make the changes. And that kind of leads into the next part, the rule changes. So this kind of is going to both describe the rule changes that have happened and the changes to the cars. Totally get why they did the COT. Technically, Ricky Rudd, I believe, broke his shoulder blade, or broke his shoulder in one of the final Gen 4 cars or Gen 5 cars. I know that there were slight differences between the car that they ran from like 99 to 2003 roughly, and then they modified the body a little bit more from 2004 through 2007, around the time of the COT. But in regards to the rule changes, like, Ricky Rudd got injured. That sucks. Got wrecked out in California and broke his shoulder, I think. But without a doubt, along with that, you go from the Gen 4 car to the COT. COT was boxy, ugly, looked far too similar to all of the other cars. So a Chevy looked like a Dodge, looked like a Ford, with only decals applied to them that made it really any different. NASCAR also has been kind of inconsistent with their rules as well. But I think, and this is something that I can also offer in terms of changes for the better for NASCAR, and what I would like to see as well. So with the rule changes, they implemented the whole idea of the chase. And this also kind of leads into Brian France as well. First of all, Brian France never, ever, ever, ever should have tried to compete with the NFL or the MLB in regards to having a championship format and a similar line to both series. It just doesn't work in racing. Or it can work. It can work. But all the changes that were made from roughly 2004 to present day are aggravating. They're so aggravating. The one thing that I do, I'm not a Jimmy Johnson fan by any means. I have a little bit of respect for the guy. I think he's a good driver, and I think he's been pretty good for the sport. And the one thing that I have to say is no matter the rule changes, somehow Jimmy and Chad managed to rise to the occasion, go with NASCAR's rules, and absolutely win so many championships and rack up so many championships. Probably the fastest dynasty in terms of championships that I've ever seen. Between the years of 2006 was their very first championship. 2006 through 2017, they managed to win 7 championships. That's impressive as hell. I cannot deny that. But, here's the thing. So, I remember watching the 2004 chase. I remember seeing the finale at Homestead. We actually have it recorded on VHS somewhere. Really, really good race and a really exciting finish. 2005, very similar. Tony Stewart wins the championship, goes off and goes there. Then you get to the Johnson era. Oh boy, the Johnson era. I can't remember if my numbers are right, but if I am correct, I believe Jimmy managed to win the championship from 2006 through 2010. That's a long time of seeing the same person win the championship every single year. And then, okay, so we got 2011, good championship battle at the end in regards to Tony Stewart managing to somehow come back after barely making it into the chase, winning 5 of the 10 chase races and beats out Carl Edwards in a tiebreaker at Homestead only because he won those 5 races in the chase. He didn't have a single win in that entire 2011 season, and he comes off as the champion. That was exciting. And then we go back to the Johnson era. And right around 2014 was especially when I really started to fall off the sport. So let's talk about 2014 specifically. So up until now, we've had the chase. The chase is 10 races long, and the only way that you're eliminated from the chase is if you have lost enough points that you mathematically cannot get into, even on the final race. There's no way you'd be able to make up enough points in order to beat out the championship leader, even if they finished dead last. There's no way to do it. 2014 was a big change year. Now, I will say this. Some positive things that they did was they offered points to the winner. So in 2014, you won a race, you get locked into the chase. I think that's a little bit heavy, like that's a little bit too big of a step forward, but okay, you gave the winner points, which is good. I think they actually implemented that earlier. Then, the part that I don't like, and that is the elimination style. Now, I have a couple of friends, they're very, very into the elimination style. However, I'm not. I'm honestly not. And I can give you 2 reasons why. In 2015, I believe, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was racing against Kevin Harvick, or I think it was Joey Logano, I'm sorry. Joey Logano and Dale Jr. are at the front of the pack in the fall race at Talladega. The green flag waves. Kevin Harvick gets into someone, causes a wreck, the caution flag comes out, the race is over. The only way that Dale Earnhardt Jr. would have been assured to move up into the next line in the chase was if he won the race. Now, I think I'm getting my years mixed up a little bit because I almost feel like something similar had happened the previous year in 2014, but I think I'm getting my years a little bit cross-faded and confused. But the point that I wanted to make is, at least, and I want to use 2014 as an example, especially, I look at Dale Earnhardt Jr. and, okay, so he gets knocked out of the chase. He's eliminated because he doesn't have enough points to meet this lockout system. And he goes off and he wins the next week at Martinsville. Like I said, this is 2014, so give me a little bit of a break. By all means, that could have helped him in the championship run if you didn't have the elimination style aspect to the chase that we have now. A better example that I can give is 2017. Kyle Larson has a really good regular season and gets into the chase. Has a bad week, and can turn it around at Kansas. His engine blows up at Kansas, and he's now out of the chase. He then goes on to run actually pretty well still for the rest of the season, but because of the lockout, he is no longer championship eligible. Here's where I would like to see things change, and this is both combining, like I said, with the rule changes in Brian France. Here's how I see it. So, by all means, keep the way that the regular points are distributed all across the board. So, the current setup is, at least, I think it's been modified slightly because of the smaller fields and everything like that, but let's just leave it at this. When it was first introduced, was the 43-1 point system. You win the race, you got 43 points. You finish second, you get 42. You finish third, you get 41, and it goes all the way down to 43rd where you get 1 measly point. Something would have to happen to your car to get dead last, or you would just start in park, but you would get a single point. The way it used to be in the Cup Series, I believe, was back in the Winston era, is you got 175 points for winning the race, you got 165 points for finishing second, I think you got like 160 for finishing third, and then it just kind of trickled down in kind of odd broken up numbers, really, going then on down. So, change it up. change it up with this. Do the 43 to 1. If you want to do stage racing, okay. I will comment on this. I'm not a fan of stage racing, not because it exists, but because of how it's implemented. Let me explain real quick. I don't like the fact that when the stage is over, a caution flag is flown, which then leads to allow the drivers to relax, get a chance to make pit stops, go back out, bunch up the field, and then in about 5 to 7 laps, throw the green flag again, and go racing until the next stage ends. My thought is to modify this slightly. Don't throw the yellow on that specific lap. Whoever is in their current running order from 1st through 10th gets those points still. That's fine by me. Don't throw the yellow. And there's a reason why I say that. It allows the teams to have kind of an easy strategy for when they need to make their pit stops. The one good thing about the earlier years of NASCAR is you had no idea when a caution flag was going to fly. And NASCAR is guilty of this without a doubt. But they did have phantom debris cautions before the stage racing was implemented. There was a large rise. I can't even remember what video I was watching, but there was a large rise statistically of caution flags coming out from around 2007, I believe, through 2013. And that sucks. It's stupid to throw a caution for no reason, then you need a commercial break. I don't think it's good strategy, however, for the sport to go and throw the yellow to end a stage. It's not necessarily needed. Like I said, you can still award points. They have data tracking on these cars. They have digital transponders stuck underneath the car over where the fuel cell is, and every time that they cross the line, that digital signal from the car is sent to the scoring tower, and they have an updated version of the current running order. Don't throw the yellow. Don't throw the yellow. It allows teams to have more thinking and more thought process of, okay, we're running a long green flag period here. There's a potential this race could go green all the way, or could go green all the way until what would be the third stage, essentially. But throwing a yellow, it doesn't need to happen. You can still have the points and everything like that. Just don't have the stage yellow. That's my biggest thing. That's the reason why I don't like stage racing, is them throwing the yellow. It makes a lot of things artificial, and I don't really care for that. And to throw into this as well, eliminate the playoff, or not necessarily the playoffs entirely, but modify it without a doubt. So here's my thought process. Actually, go ahead and get rid of the playoffs, but reanalyze it a little bit. So a lot of NASCAR fans, a lot of older NASCAR fans, really don't like the chase because it's gimmicky. Totally get it. So do this. Or maybe make a slight variation to the playoff points in terms of the stage points. Maybe change it that the top 3 only get stage points. So you have 3, 2, 1. First gets 3, second gets 2, third place gets 1. Or maybe 1 through 5. Something along those lines. But here's where the big change comes in. Eliminate the chase. Now, you may be thinking, well, isn't that going to make it boring? Isn't that going to make it, very, very unexciting by the time they get to Homestead? Possibly, but here's the thing. I don't feel that it's right for a driver to go out and race 26 races out of 36, get awarded a regular season championship trophy just for doing better than everyone else those first 26 races, and there's no guarantee that they will win the championship at the end of the year. They could have their engine expire. Go back to Larson at Kansas. He blows his motor and he's eliminated from the chase. Not because he did anything wrong, not because he was having a crappy season, but because of the arbitrary and stupid system of elimination. I really, really hate that. My thought process is this. Go ahead, keep it 43 to 1 in terms of points. If you want to do stage points, don't throw the yellow. Give points out from 1st through 10th, 1st through 5th, 1st through 3rd possibly. And then, with no chase at the end of the season, I think that there's a better standing for someone who is consistent throughout the entire season to win the championship. Yeah, you don't have that Game 7 moment at Homestead, or in this year they're going to be going to Phoenix, but you don't have that Game 7 moment. But racing doesn't need to have a Game 7 moment. Racing should be exciting from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And to me, it makes, with the aspect of the chase and the elimination especially, it makes the entire first two-thirds of the season pretty much pointless. It makes it so pointless because you have such a high risk of getting eliminated. And there's not even anything that you do. You could definitely push a little bit harder, but it doesn't always work that way. I also want to point this out, going back to the Winston Cup era and everything like that. You look at Terry Labonte, I believe he won the 1996 championship, or 1997 championship. I can't remember which year. But Iron Man Terry Labonte, he had only 1 to 2 wins that season, I believe. Jeff Gordon went on a tear and won so many races. But Terry Labonte was a championship holder. And why? Terry was more consistent than Jeff. And in my thought process, especially when it comes to racing, those who are good from season's beginning to season's end deserve to be champion. Now, this is why I kind of leave in the whole 43-1 aspect. I will definitely say, and especially the reason why they made the chase in the first place, was so you don't have someone like Matt Kenseth go win one single race, dominate the entire season, and by the end of Homestead, there is no by the end of the 35th race of the season, there's no reason to watch Homestead because he's already clinched the championship. But my thought process is this: if you can clinch a championship early, all because you're more consistent than your competitors, you deserve to win that championship. If you can wrap it up early because you're a good driver, because you have a good team, because you have good equipment, because you showed that you were the best driver that season, you deserve to win the championship early if you can. But the benefit is with the whole 43-1, it makes the racing and it makes the points finishes a little bit tighter. I also can offer this too. So I will definitely say a big part of it as well is that in regards to the older Winston Cup format, I believe it went that you got 5 points for leading a lap, 5 points for leading the most laps, and 5 points for leading at the halfway point. Or maybe it was 1 point for leading a lap. Either way, in a long 500-mile race, you could potentially not win the race but rack up so many points from leading and just finishing in the top 5, top 10 by the end of the race. You definitely have a big cushion ahead of you. And like I said, that's really what helped Matt Kenseth dominate the 2003 season. But if you shrink up the point values between first and second, that there's only 1 point separating them, it means that drivers can potentially race even harder, and by race's end, you're not going to have a 15, 20 point margin. You're maybe only going to have a point margin of about maybe 5 to 10 points. Now, someone could definitely still run away with it, like I said, but at least it isn't the case of possibly getting abused as badly. Like I said, there's about a 10 to 15 point difference between first and second in regards to the Winston Cup era. But like I said, tighten it up a little bit. Or, my also counterpoint to this as well, if you really don't want to have points for leading a lap or points for winning a pole, which maybe they should bring that back, I don't know. But in regards to at least with running for points during the race, I think that a driver who leads at the halfway point should maybe go ahead and get 3 bonus points or whatever. That's if you go ahead and cut the stages out. Like I said, cut the stages, then you have to allocate the points elsewhere, but whether you want to have stages or not, say in stages like I said earlier, keep it under green, you go and you award the driver points for that. Or you cut the stages, maybe 3 points for leading the most, 3 points for leading at the halfway, 5 points for leading the most laps throughout the race. We are not counting laps led by points, so you don't get any points for leading a single lap, but you do get points for leading at the halfway point and leading the most amount of laps. That's an accumulative bonus that you get there. And then in regards to the winner bonus, I could go either way with it, to be honest. It's kind of been a thing anyway. A lot of drivers back in the Winston Cup era could go and dominate a race, so they would get 5, 10 extra bonus points there. Or they would lead at the halfway and lead the most laps, and they would get an extra 10 bonus points there. And then they would still get their original 175 for winning the race. So maybe there can be slight variation on that, maybe make it a little bit tighter, but this rewards the driver throughout the race. This rewards the driver from beginning to end. And I think it really removes the gimmick. And going back to something else in regards to rule changes as well, is you remove the chase format. You remove especially the elimination format. That means the only way that you get knocked out of your championship hopes is if you mathematically cannot go and gain the most amount of points that you can on the final race of the season, that you cannot go after the championship. And there was something that I wanted to mention, and this doesn't deal with Company Man, but it does deal with Eric Estep on YouTube. He covers a decent amount of the playoffs and everything like that, and he mentioned something along the lines of drivers that are just like right on the outside looking in to try and get into the chase. Well, now that the chase has consisted of 16 drivers, he actually made a very interesting and honestly a really good point. In the older days, if you managed to get into the top 10 or get into the top 15 in points by season's end in the Winston Cup era, that was actually an okay year for you. You could definitely be pretty well appreciated and pretty well liked for getting a 15th place points finish, especially if you're a younger and newer talent in the sport. Now that we have the elimination style, the chase, everything else like that, you finish 16th in points, it doesn't look good on you because you made it into the chase and you still couldn't win the championship, or you got eliminated, or it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for the team, it doesn't look good for the sponsor, and especially does not look good for the driver. If all of these companies and everything like that are like, well, we expect you to finish 10th in points by season's end, and you get eliminated, and you end up getting placed 11th, and you don't meet those sponsorship expectations, that's not going to look good on you, and you run the risk of getting dumped out of the ride. Alright. So, that's my thought. 43-1, maybe lead laps, most laps led, maybe leading at the halfway, you get bonus points for that. No elimination, and the only way that you're out of a championship is if you mathematically cannot make the difference up by any means, you are then eliminated. Like, just purely on math. And I know that it is extenuating circumstances, and a lot of stuff happened in order to make this situation the way it was. But I look at the 1992 Winston Cup points battle for the final race at Atlanta. That had 5 to 6 drivers mathematically in a chance to win the championship. Could the furthest behind driver like Mark Martin or Harry Gant win the championship? In terms of likelihood, probably not that year. But they mathematically had a shot. And you look at Alan Kowicki, and he managed to do it. A lot of stuff worked in his favor, to be fair, but it worked in his favor. And he managed to win the championship. If you can give us something similar to that, I'm all for it. Because it rewards consistency, and it has the potential to make for a really good championship finale. You know, it's consistent. It is what it is. The economy. Alright, let's talk about this pretty briefly. So, here's the way that it works for me. So I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Kentucky Speedway in Sparta is about 1 hour and 1 minute away from me. Indianapolis Motor Speedway to the west of me, it takes about maybe 2 hours to get to Indianapolis. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe 2:15, maybe 2:20. But it's not a terrible drive, but it is a long drive. I don't know how long it would take to get to Michigan. I don't know how long it would take to get to Watkins Glen. I don't know how long it would take to get to a lot of other tracks. But I will say this, the 2008 economy did not help anyone. I look at racing, especially NASCAR during that time, and there were some big name sponsors there and some big name drivers with some big name teams. And by the end of it, they were no longer associated with some of these teams, and these drivers were let go because they were too expensive. And especially now, I do kind of want to comment on this, with the whole DC Solar, Zloop, I believe it was, IK9, though I think that they may have just missed their payment, so I don't think that they're in as much crap as especially DC Solar is. Very recently, with Formula One having the Rich Energy Company pull out of Haas. Yeah, there's a lot of weird sponsorship going on right now in racing in general, and a lot of these seem to be fraudulent companies. Yeah, teams are looking for sponsorship because they need that sponsorship because these cars are so expensive, especially with the Gen 6. And we're going into the Gen 7 one way or another, either in 2020 or 2021. But in regards to that, money is needed badly. Money is needed very badly. And the whole financial issues in 2008 did not help anyone out. It hurt the teams, it hurt the fans, and it caused a lot of instability within our nation during that time. And to be honest, I think we've kind of fixed it a little bit. Or at least we're not in as bad of a state as we were in 2008. But I don't know. It really feels like we're not completely out of it. I'm doing my job and everything like that. And maybe this doesn't even relate to the whole 2008 recession. But to me personally, it feels like it still is especially difficult for someone to go and be able to make a livable wage without the cost of living really interfering. What I really mean to say is that a lot of goods and services have hiked in price over the last 11 years, and I don't think that wages have really well equipped to what the cost of living is. And you raise the wages, yeah, you make a little bit more money, but the problem is that also the cost of living is also going to rise as well. So in the recession of 2008, the problem was that a lot of jobs were let go, a lot of money was lost, the housing market, I think, went to poo. A lot of bad stuff happened, and while I think we've kind of dug ourselves a little bit out of it, I don't feel that we are in a state where you go back to 2004, 2007, you go within that time period where I think things were a lot more equal in terms of cost of living, the ability to go to a race, and everything like that. Let me just honestly state this. This stuff is expensive. To give you kind of an idea, and I will say that NASCAR has done actually a little bit better in regards to their ticket packages, which has made it a little bit easier. So I'm going to give you an example. The Kentucky race on Friday, the Xfinity event, through a special deal, through someone who does PR for BJ McLeod Motorsports, I was sold Hot Pass tickets and the ability to sit on pit road and watch the race. I had to pay for food, I had to pay for gas, had to pay for the ticket, and luckily with the way that I believe it's IMS, or SMI, I'm sorry, does their bundle deal sort of at their tracks, is that anyone who is 17 and under can get in free. That saved me a lot of money. I only had to pay for my ticket, and my two younger siblings, 17 and 13, were able to go with me for free. And all that it really cost me was about $150 for the ticket. Like I said, they got in for free. And I saved up very long to get those tickets and make that back in my job. But I had to pay for gas, paid for a little bit for food. I think I spent about maybe 20 something dollars on food for the three of us. But it didn't have, and then I bought them headphones as well, so their ears would be fine. I could have also bought earplugs, but whatever. Anyway, the point being is that in all of that, I didn't lose out really bad. And more than anything, we got a great experience out of that. My brothers had never really been to a NASCAR race before, and I talked about this in a previous video, but they got the top tier experience. They got to sit on pit road. They got to see the garage. They got to meet some drivers. And this track is only an hour away from us. So, all in all, that really wasn't an expensive trip. I go to the local racetrack, Lawrenceburg Speedway in Indiana. Just about 45 minutes away. Tickets, maybe $15 to $20 or so. You go on USAC Sprint Car Night Week, or you go on the USAC Sprint Car race there, you get a great show. Concessions, a little pricey. A lot of places are, whether it's baseball parks, football stadiums, NASCAR races, any place that sells food within the specific area is going to be expensive. Don't get me wrong on that. But it's not bad. It's not as bad as a lot of people would think. But it's going to cost a lot more if I wanted to go to California and see the Auto Club race. It's going to cost me more to go to Daytona Beach, Florida to watch the Daytona 500. All of that is going to cost more. And it sucks because I wish that there were more tracks throughout the entirety of the United States that NASCAR went to, so you could be able to get some of these markets where people don't have to travel as far to go to a cup race. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's really not that bad, but for other people, it can be worse. And for those who do tailgating, or especially have an RV and whatnot, and travel to these races, it gets really expensive. I haven't incurred that cost yet, but I know it's expensive for others. So that really, really sucks. So I totally get it. I don't know what NASCAR can really do beyond that. I will say that the whole aspect, and I'm going to talk about video games for a moment here, with the newer aspect that SMI has been doing with giving a voucher. You get a voucher for $50 to go to a NASCAR race if you buy the PS4 or Xbox One version of the NASCAR Heat games. That's actually pretty cool. You're spending $60 to get a game, and you get a $50 free ticket to any of their supported races. But yeah, like, just kind of all of that. It's really, really tough. And I get that. I totally get that. I don't know what I can really suggest beyond dropping the prices of some stuff down, and the merchandise especially. Oh my god, the merchandise is expensive as all can be. Hats are running around about $25 per hat. Shirts are ranging anywhere from about $25 to $40. You get the pit shirts, they're like $129. I wait around for sales generally if I want to get any like souvenirs or whatnot. Diecast 164s are about $10. 124s are about $50. This stuff is expensive. So, yeah. With all that considered, like, I think it's really difficult to really drive the price down on it. Okay, next area, personality. Okay, so this is actually something that I'm thinking about a little bit and had been thinking about somewhat even prior to watching this video. So here's what I think. There is definitely personality in this sport still. You have drivers like Kyle Busch. You have drivers like Ryan Blaney. You have drivers like Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, Corey LaJoy, Daniel Hemrick, Matt DiBenedetto. Can't really say much about Jimmy Johnson. But you have a lot of drivers with a lot of different personalities and a lot of different things. the thing is, and this is what's tough. I want to use Ryan Blaney as a primary example, and I even want to throw Bubba into here a little bit as well. Blaney is loved by a lot of fans. Oh my God, a lot of fans. He's rather handsome. Dude's got the Glass Case of Emotion podcast, which can be very, very funny. He has done some media stuff too in regards to being a co-commentator or a pit commentator for some of the Xfinity races. But his primary job is racing the number 12 Ford for Roger Penske. And here's where things are a little scary. So you have someone with great charisma, great interactivity with the fans, good talent level, no doubt, but he's not producing the results that I think we kind of expect Team Penske to have. I mean, you look at Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano, both of them have championships with Penske's organization. Logano won the Daytona 500 back in 2015, I believe. And they're usually really good in the points, and they're usually good at racing too. They get wins, they get top fives, they get top tens. And this isn't necessarily Blaney's fault. I think that there were definitely races last season, especially Bristol in the spring, that he should have won. But either due to bad luck with like a tire going down, or something breaking on the car, or getting involved in a wreck that was not of his own doing. You expect these drivers to do better. And like I said, it's not even their fault half of the time. But the problem is, especially with the economy, is that, and the whole aspect of drivers coming up from the lower series to present, it makes drivers, unfortunately, really, really expendable. And you lose, in some cases, some really top-notch personalities. I kind of get that certain drivers have kind of like been moved the wayside a little bit in regards to just getting older or just not performing or whatever the case may be. But here's the thing. A lot of drivers that are retiring now or into their 40s, honestly, that still is fairly young. Now, some drivers I totally get why they retired. Dale Earnhardt Jr. retired in 2017. Reason, head injuries. He had a lot of concussions over the last leg of his career. And he just didn't want to get injured anymore. Totally get that. Carl Edwards, a very surprise retirement at, I think he was only 39. Top of his game, potentially almost won the championship, got involved in a wreck at the very end of the Homestead race, or near the end of the Homestead race, and retired. And who do they get to replace him? Daniel Suarez. Nothing against Suarez, but I do want to talk about this in regards. So, the problem is that with the way that racing has gone recently, and it's not even necessarily NASCAR, it's all types of racing, is that to get into racing nowadays, you need to have a sponsor already lined up. You need to have that money available, and you need to give that to the team. You pay the sponsor pays the team, you get a ride. You're a paid driver, essentially. Now, if you can go and you can win races and win championships, that's even better, because that really, really helps the credibility of the sponsor, of the team, and how much they are putting to gamble on you can really, really help them. However, it also feels like they are pushing drivers way too quickly up into the Cup Series because of that sponsorship money. There are good drivers, like, I want to give a prime example, James Buescher. James Buescher was a hell of a wheelman, and really, really good generally. He goes and he wins the truck championship. And he's solid and consistent. Goes into the Busch Series. I think he won a few races there. I think he even got up to Cup very, very briefly. And then he's just gone. Because he couldn't get sponsorship, and then no one hired him. No one could afford to saddle him under their own team if he didn't have sponsorship. And I look at this as with Daniel Suarez. This is someone that I did want to talk about. Suarez, goes and wins the Busch Series, wins the Xfinity Series championship. Then Carl Edwards gets bumped out and replaced with Daniel Suarez because the money from Eris is coming to and going to Daniel Suarez. That's their primary driver. He goes, joins Gibbs, doesn't do much, not terrible. He just has a really, really hard time acclimating to it. Gets dropped and then gets picked up this season with Stewart-Haas Racing. And there's a real big risk and worry that potentially Suarez may be bumped out of the ride again. And the biggest worry that I have is that NASCAR and the teams are pushing so hard for these young drivers who have solid personalities. But once their sponsorship money dries up, they don't want to. They just go on to the next driver. And I will say that this is kind of what I think happened to a few drivers as well in 2008 with the whole recession and everything like that. There were drivers who were definitely making moves and definitely could have had longer careers in NASCAR than they did, but they got dropped because they didn't have sponsorship. Now, I'm not going to say that I think that it's that the driver shouldn't be involved in any aspect of sponsorship. I won't say that. But I think the fact that you need to have sponsorship in order for you to get a ride, and that you're not looked at sponsors and you're not looked at the team based off of your driving ability as key anymore, really, really sucks. Because unfortunately, I think that you lose a certain amount of talent there, and they either just don't go and race NASCAR anymore and they go off and do their own thing, or they potentially go to a different series and they do great there. And that just really bothers me. It really, really does. It sucks. It's just leaving a crop of drivers that essentially the way that the system is working is that you buy your favorite driver's merchandise, and they're out of the car within 4 years if they don't perform. And even like the highest named drivers, like I don't think Kevin Harvick's having any issues getting sponsorship as well as Kyle Busch, but I look at Jimmy Johnson. Lowe's left NASCAR to go pursue, I think it was either soccer or the NFL, and now he's sponsored by Ally Bank. And Jimmy has had the biggest dynasty with Lowe's. He won all of his championships with Lowe's. They just up and left. And that's really, really strange. And it really sucks. I get that racing is expensive. And I think that the whole changes, especially with the COT, it just hiked prices up more. And now we've got the newer rules package and engine restrictions and all that stuff. It's getting the sport to be really stupid expensive. And it doesn't even need to be this expensive. But in turn, you're also taking drivers, you're chewing them up, you're spitting them out, and they've got nowhere to go. They've got nowhere to go, and they barely get a shot to redeem themselves. I look at Ron Hornaday as an example. Frickin' Ron Hornaday, solid-ass truck driver, goes out, wins championships with Kevin Harvick Incorporated, goes and runs super well. Kevin Harvick Incorporated shuts its doors, goes on to a different team, and is actually pretty consistent still. Like, he had some tough spots, but he was still pretty good. And is on a chance to potentially get into championship contention, and the team folds, or the truck folds, due to sponsorship issues. Ron Hornaday, all the talent that he possessed, all the hard racing that he showed on the track with Kevin Harvick Incorporated, the string, I think it was in 2009, when he won the truck championship, and just dominated, absolutely crushed the entire season, and went on such a tear of winning, like, I think he won like 4 or 5 races in a row, tying a record with Richard Petty and Bobby Allison. Like, I think even Harry Gant holds a certain distinction in that regard too. But he's a great truck driver, and he loses his chance at winning more championships and winning more races. All not because he's not talented, not because he got too old, but because the sponsorship dried up and the team shut down. How does that happen? How does that happen? And I don't think that it's right. I really don't. And you see drivers with potentially great talent and solid racing, and they get bumped out for a pay driver, and it just sucks. It just sucks so much. I hate it. I really, really hate it. I know that racing has gotten expensive, and I get that, but you've got personality in the sport. And unfortunately, to a certain extent, because of the way that the sponsors work, they want the squeaky clean driver. They want someone like Jeff Gordon who won't say a bad word or anything like that. And you've lost a lot of personality in certain regards, but it's not completely gone. It's not completely dead. You know, you still, like I said, you still have Kyle Busch, you still have Ryan Blaney, you still have Bubba Wallace, you still have Kevin Harvick. Well, maybe not Kevin Harvick so much. He's kind of like weakened a little bit. He doesn't really shoot his mouth off as much as he used to, but the point is, his personality's still there. I just think that so many of the sponsors, unfortunately, just want this squeaky clean image, and we'll say that society really doesn't help in that matter either. So, okay. And then the final one he mentions is environment. So, okay. NASCAR really has made some improvements, definitely, towards being more green and more environmentally friendly. They've switched over from, I think it was just pure methanol or whatever, to ethanol fuel based off of corn. So they've used that. The IndyCar Series has been doing that for quite some time as well. They use a blend of fuel to gas up their cars. I know that certain energy companies have kind of come into the sport as well. Like I said, DC Solar. I mean, that's, you know, they are what they are right now, which is kind of funny in its own respect. And I feel so bad for Kyle Larson, because that could have really, really helped him, especially this season. And Ross Chastain as well. I mean, DC Solar was going to sponsor the 42 car, but beside the point. Yeah, and they've got solar panels. They've got wind farms. Like, they're doing a good job regarding the environment. But there is something that I want to loop back to, and it's an early point that he made, is people. People, and especially the younger generation. So, let me say this. So, NASCAR has, for their series, for the truck series, they run the Silverado, Ford, Yes, they do run the Ford F-150. There's just not many teams that run with Ford nowadays. That's right. I'm sorry. So, Chevy has the Silverado, Ford has the F-150, and Toyota has the Tundra. In the Xfinity Series, you've got the Camaro with Chevy, you've got the Mustang with Ford, and you've got the Toyota Supra. In the Cup Series, you've got the Toyota Camry, you've got the Chevy Camaro ZL1, and the Ford Mustang. Okay. Those are all the cars that I mentioned. First of all, these cars, I did research on this a long time, quite a while ago, but I think these were the numbers that I found. To get a Chevy ZL1 at the base package is $56,000. Ford Mustang, I think it was like $26,000. Toyota Camry, $23,000. Okay? Supra, I don't know what that costs. I know it's expensive though. But the point is this: the cars that NASCAR is pushing on to people that the manufacturers are pushing on to people to represent their brand are kind of out of our financial range. You know, I mentioned earlier I'm 24. Do you want to know what I've driven? I drove a 1996 Toyota Corolla that still runs to this day. It's got its little issues. And then what did I switch to? I switched to a 2000 Honda Civic. Now, a lot of that is because I'm young and I've just recently started being in a full-time position that this is my career. But I can't necessarily say to you that it would be easy for me to go and get a Ford Mustang, or especially get a Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 and not really have to deal with a lot of financial burden because of it. Stuff is expensive. And with the younger people switching over, you know, people in my generation switching over to hybrids and doing drive shares with like Uber and Lyft, etc., Like, we were looking for cars that are fuel efficient, not necessarily fun. Um, my Honda managed to get me like 326 miles or so on city driving and highway driving from when I gassed it up on Thursday of last week and got me all the way to about, I want to say, Wednesday of this week, I think. Wednesday or Tuesday. The point is we are not looking for cars that are like super fun or super expensive. We want something that's practical. And also, too, and I want to comment on this as well, with the newer cars, it's also getting, and he does make a good point, and I certainly agree with it, it's getting harder to go and fix these cars because the newer cars have so many electronic aids to them, and so many electronic features built right into it. My Honda Civic is a 2000 LX. It's a base model. It's in a time where it's got the little like stick pole locking system and everything like that. It's got a simple fob. There really isn't a lot of stuff that is set up to be really super exciting or super high performance, high sport on that car. It's a very simple car. It runs and it's easy to work on as well because it's a Japanese car and it's spacey. You can work on all the parts there, and more than anything, especially comparing to newer cars, the abundance of parts that you can get, third party or first party, are plentiful. They're so plentiful. So if you have something fail or something breaks, you can go and get it fixed pretty cheaply. And I will say too, it doesn't hurt to know a good amount of cars, like about cars or how to maintain them, but it is difficult in the newer age with all of these, high fancy features that when they fail, you yourself cannot get them fixed. You have to take them to a mechanic and they have to charge you up the butt to get it fixed. And even then, it's not even guaranteed that they will actually get it fixed. So that's a topic about another time. Anyway, the point being is this. The only big upgrade to my car that I did on it was I put a dash cam in it and I put a touchscreen interface into the audio console. That's all I did. And it's almost equivalent to a brand new car, more or less. I can put a rear view camera in the back of the car and I can have a backup camera. I've got the potential to modify this car a little bit to make it a little bit more kind of up to spec, at least in terms of modern day features. For newer cars, and not really costing me really all that much. This car really isn't even worth a lot of money, like $5,000 or under. That's easy to pay for. That's a used car right there. But the point being is this: I don't really see, and motorsports in general is kind of affected by this, whether it's IndyCar, F1, NASCAR, sports cars, whatever. People just aren't interested in racing as much anymore, and they're not interested in cars as much, and it's because a lot of this stuff has gotten so expensive and so complex too. I love racing, don't get me wrong, I always will. I love watching IndyCar. I love watching, when I can catch it every now and then, the whole entire aspect of sports car racing. I think it's cool as hell. But man, oh man, in the way that everything goes, in the way that everything is, especially when you look at New York, like New York City specifically, it's almost pointless to own a car because it's just nothing but traffic there. And it's easier to just go walk or get a lift or whatever the case may be. And then there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. It does kind of deal with the economy. It does kind of deal with the older audience. And it does kind of deal with boredom, I guess, a little bit in the video. But there's something very key that I also wanted to mention, and this is my final talking point. It's TV networks. So, when I would sit down and watch a NASCAR race back in the day, it would be on Fox, regular Fox, NBC, ABC, and sometimes on TNT. I don't know when the TNT contract came about, but it was on TNT. But what did that mean? That meant, if I were to go back in the day and I had my television and TV tuner that I have now, if I wanted to, back in the day, I could sit down up here in my room and I could watch the NASCAR race. I could watch the entire Fox schedule. And then when it switched over to ABC or NBC, I could watch it here too. I could pretty much watch the entirety of the NASCAR season from beginning to end and not need to have a cable package. Now, you need to have a cable package, and that cable package is expensive. And it frustrates me so much because there's still good races out there, but it's difficult to obtain them. If you don't have a cable package, which is expensive on its own, and you don't have all these additional channels, and you're only going to watch maybe like one event on it per week, and you're not interested in any of the other stuff, and this is also another small thing. I won't say that Speed Channel had perfect levels of programming, but it was cool to see a channel specifically centered around racing and cars. I can't say that I ever really liked Pink Slips, but for what I could see on Speed Channel, even though there was a cable channel, I could watch highlights of the NASCAR race. I could watch Wind Tunnel with Dave Despain, which I freaking loved. I could see the NASCAR Victory Lane. I could see Speed Hub, I think it was, which was similar to Dave Despain in a certain sense, but just more across the board with a lot of different people. You know, you could be able to catch up on all types of motorsports. You could be able to see MotoGP races. You could see Supercross races. Now, Speed Channel is dead. It's replaced with Fox Sports 1. You occasionally get a NASCAR race, and then everything else on the channel is composed of baseball, soccer, football, golf, and all the other sports. It's a general sports channel. It's essentially the Fox version of ESPN and all of ESPN's affiliates. The point being is this. You could probably only watch maybe like 3 races on regular cable television, or regular television. You cannot do that. You cannot watch the whole season anymore, and it frickin' sucks. And this is probably the reason why a lot of places do streaming. The NASCAR has kind of gotten a little bit better about some of this stuff. Like, I'm rather happy that they're actually very open about allowing, and IndyCar too, I want to give them props for that as well. IndyCar actually kind of originated this. They're so open to uploading their races after they're done to their YouTube channels, and that's great. But it doesn't help us in the immediate time when the race is happening live, because by the time the race is over, you can just jump on Twitter, you can just jump on Google, you can jump on Facebook, and you can find out who won the race, and you can get little elements there. The entire aspect of television has just gotten so frustrating to deal with. And that's another piece of the pie too, which is what has turned me off a little bit. Is not only the rule changes, but it's just getting harder and harder and harder to catch these races. IndyCar also kind of in the same spectrum too. I think they generally only have the Indy 500 like available on regular television, and just about everything else is on NBC Sports Network. And even though that I can look up the schedule and everything like that, who knows if I'm actually going to be able to sit down and watch it. Or, in my case, at least up here, I like to watch my races with friends as well. Well, I don't have access to cable. I can't do it. So I have to watch a stream. So, I know that's probably like a whole different situation in regards to money and everything like that within racing and television and whatnot. But it just sucks. It really, really sucks. Alright, guys. So I think I covered everything. Like I said, I got nothing against Company Man. I think he did a good job on it. But I just wanted to give my take, at least, as someone who is a little bit of a cross-generational fan. There's a lot of fans who are newer and really like what they're seeing and really, really don't like the aspects of the older Winston Cup days. And then there are groups all across the internet that are specifically only focused on the past of NASCAR and not looking at what we have currently and just denounce everything as it's crap. Um, I straddle both lines. I will say that there are elements of the past that I like better than what we have now, but I will say too there are elements of stuff that I like now, especially in regards to kind of the fan interaction, especially that NASCAR and other racing series have done in the present day that wasn't available back in 2003 or 2001 and whatnot. So I sit along both sides of the fence. So anyway, that's it, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think ahead. Leave comments down below. Follow me on social media. I'll catch you guys again very soon.